Welcome to episode 219 of the Grip Strip Podcast, the Papaya Crush edition of the Grip Strip Podcast. My name is Philip Matthew. I'm your host, and I'm with my co-host, the iRacing Indy 500 champion, computer genius, a gentleman and a scholar. His name is Joshua Fine. What's going on, brother?
Hey, I'm doing great, Phil. Of course, back for another week of racing here. A lot of action happening here at Miami and Florida in F1, and of course, the closest finish now in NASCAR Cup Series history at Kansas. So now got a lot of discourse now and a lot of things that we got to talk about in a result of that. So glad to be back on for the show.
Yeah, we're going to definitely talk about the whole Larson versus Buescher at the end of the Cup race at Kansas, the caution that came out there late, which allowed the finish to happen that took place since Chris Buescher and Ford were close yet again to getting a first win in 2024. His car, and then Blaney, after what was a nightmare day for him, was up there when it counted. A lot of stuff went on there in the third segment. The first two segments were tame and clean. They were trying to get the race in because of the rain. So we'll definitely get into all that. We'll also talk about the hybrid aspect, which came out of the woodwork, where NASCAR's plan was to put a hybrid aspect element to the drive line so that they could add horsepower, since these cars are dog slow. So we'll see about that. We'll talk about it. In the Xfinity series, it was Truck series, sorry. Corey Heim took another win. He's had a dominant stretch to start this season, but it really is a mirror of last year, when he was uber consistent, won the regular season title, lost his mind at Phoenix, but this is the Corey Heim that there's a reason why he's in a cup car. There's a reason that on that last restart he was in a position to possibly get a top 10 finish in only a second career cup start. So he goes out there, gets the win. Interesting leaderboard behind Corey Heim. So we'll talk about that and the points for both series heading to Darlington. I'm going to bring out the soundboard because the fact of the matter is, for all the McLaren fans that listen to this show, Lando Norris beat Fish Lips to win the Miami Grand Prix and get his first career F1 victory. I think that's 2 for 2 for me, actually, watching Lights to Flag and people that weren't Fish Lips winning. So maybe I guess I have to watch races, but I figure at Imola it'll go back to the usual deal. Fish Lips on the hard tires wasn't able to make things work, and Lando Norris, timely safety car, fell into his lap, and then he got away from his butt buddy and went and won his first race. A certain other orange character was there amongst the masses at Miami, fundraising for his eventual prison sentence. But we'll give our kudos to Lando and McLaren, essentially with their upgrade package, coming in and beating Red Bull head up, straight up, and having the pace to be with them the whole day. So we'll talk about all that. Lewis Hamilton got a 6th place finish, after starting deeper in the field, beating Woody in the process. So a good run. Had a chance. If he actually had a decent car, he probably would have passed Sergio Perez, which would have been pretty insane. But instead, he gets a 6th place finish. We'll talk about all the things going on in Formula One. Logan Sargent getting yeeted by Kevin Magnussen. After Kevin Magnussen probably had one of the worst weekends of his career in terms of driving ability and lack thereof. We will, and also, heading to Imola, the points we just celebrated, or not celebrated, we looked back at, we celebrated the lives of Roland Ratzenberger and Ayrton Senna. It was the 30-year anniversary of their passing, and there was a mural of Senna there for the Miami Grand Prix, but they also did a special for Roland Ratzenberger on Sky for what he went through to get to Formula One. So going to Imola, it'll be pretty emotional going there this time. The roundup will have F1 Academy. They raced at Miami this past weekend. Tony Stewart got back in a McPhillips top alcohol dragster and won, and almost won the Indy 800 at IRP in a Ford Crown Vic, spun out while trying to race for the win there. Cletus McFarland arranging this whole weekend there. Moto will preview MotoGP, Moto2 at Le Mans, IMSA at Laguna Seca, the World Endurance Championship at Spa, and they put out the entry list for the 24 Hours of Le Mans as well. Formula E with the double header at Berlin. Rally Portugal for the WRC, and Indy next at the IMS road course. And 24. We'll preview the Sanzio Grand Prix at IMS on the Indy road course as the lead up, obviously, to the Indianapolis 500. The triple header taking place this weekend at Darlington, Mother's Day weekend, culminating in the Goodyear 400 on Sunday. We'll go over the throwbacks, what our thoughts are, what our favorites are, and the ones that probably could have been thought of or done better, or they could have went and did a different idea. Josh will let us know all things going on in iRacing and gaming in his sim segment, and we'll close the deal. So, first of all, the Advent Health 400 at Kansas Speedway was eventful, especially in the third stage. Bunch of guys that were up there really at different times during the day. But in the end, two of the dominant figures in this race ended up door banging all the way to the line, and it ended with Kyle Larson winning by 0.001 of a second, at least on the NASCAR race results page. Ran one lap over the scheduled distance because they had to go to a green-white checkered. Kyle Larson, the winner, over Christopher Buescher, who won stage 2. William Clyde Elliott the second. Martin Truex Jr., Dennis Hamlin, who won stage 1 and was in line to possibly win the race, led the most laps. Christopher Bell started on pole, fell back, was able to come back and finish 6th. Alex Bowman, Kyle Busch, who had a decent car for a good amount of the day. Noah Gragson, I actually have to start calling him by his name because he's the only Stewart-Haas racing car that seems to show up on a weekly basis, or at least for the last couple of weeks. Chase was doing well, and then that went away. He dropped anchor after starting 10th, was a lap down outside of the top 30, and then somehow or another got there late to where he was in the top 15, and then eventually ended up where he ended up, which was 21st. Michael McDowell rounded out the top 10. So there were 3 Fords in the top 10. A bunch of Toyotas, of course. 3 Toyotas all together, all 3 Gibbs cars. You go and look outside the top 10, Brad Keselowski, Ryan Blaney, John Hunter Nemechek, Todd Gilliland, Josh Berry. So 4 Fords there. Richard. Bubba Wallace. Richard getting a contract extension now. Who he's going to be racing for and what the sponsor is going to be. They say it's with JTG Doherty, but I have a hard time believing that entity is still going to be around going into 2025. But Darrell Walsh Jr., who's been great at Kansas over the years, got involved in one of the late race incidents and had to recover to 17th. Justin Haley from tailback to 18th. Ross Chastain, who started on the outside pole and led 43 laps, fell back to 19th. And Tyler Reddick, who had one of the better race cars early in the race, lost track position. One of 3 Monster Energy or 2 Monster Energy vehicles out there this past weekend, since Keebler Gibbs had Sirius XM on his car. So I mean, other standout guys. I mean, Byron finishes 23rd after starting last after hitting the fence in qualifying. Corey Heim was running in the top 10 on that final restart, but fell back to 22nd. Suarez was basically irrelevant the whole entire day. What's it called? Keebler Gibbs started 6th, had stage points in both stages, but finished 32nd, a lap down. Pizza Face was 2 laps down and 34th after spinning out and blowing tires to the point where he can't roll, because we've been with this car for how many years and they still can't figure out a way to get the damn thing to roll, because they're on the bump stops or whatever. Same thing happened to Harrison Burton, but it wasn't like he was doing anything of great significance. He was basically in the back, doing absolutely nothing. Gumby Cindric was involved in one of the incidents there. It was with Denny Hamlin hooked him. It also involved Bubba Wallace and Michael McDowell. And then Jimmy Johnson got sent by Corey LaJoie. That also involved Daniel Hemrick and Austin Hill. So that was that. I mean, in the end, the battle between Larson and Buescher was quite compelling, and it came down to that last lap pass, having to make that move, and it wouldn't be Kyle Larson at a 1.5 mile racetrack not running the boards, and he was able to run the boards there, Josh, and go and beat Christopher Buescher. And I mean, for RFK Racing, it definitely is a positive step forward. For Ford, it's a small moral victory after what has been a pathetic start to the season. They seemingly qualify well. They're good in 1 lap pace, but they are basically garbage in race trim. And but Buescher was out there and he showed the kind of pace that he had last summer when he went on his run of winning 3 races or whatever to get himself into the playoffs and make himself a factor to possibly contend, at least get into the top 8 in points. That's the kind of pace he had there on Sunday. But so you can't give young money a chance, because if you give him a chance, he'll send it. And he did, and it held. and he was able to go out there and get that victory. The Papaya crush aspect of it fitting, since he's going to be driving for Arrow McLaren here starting next week at the Indianapolis 500 for his first of 2 attempts at the great race. Yeah, Kyle Larson, Josh, another win for him, solidifying himself as a contender, even though we already know he's a contender. Gives himself another victory, some more playoff points and he's actually the actual points leader in the Cup Series, and he's leading by 55 points. So there's definitely, actually Martin Truex
29.
Yeah, it's 29 points. My bad. I was looking at it based on who was behind him right there because of only having it was Clyde there. So yeah, 7 winners still through 12 races. He has a 29-point lead on Martin Truex Jr., and then it becomes a little bit more of a gap after that. But yeah, I mean, if he's able to go and get these kind of victories, it's a dangerous thing, because once he gets that kind of momentum, we saw what happened in 2021. Went off and looked like Jimmy Johnson or Jeff Gordon in their heyday, and won double-digit amount of races, including the last race to win the championship. So they need to stop that run right now, or else I think Kyle Larson could end up having a very worthwhile, profitable summer, and it won't be just in a sprint car; it'll be in a cup car too.
Yeah, for Kyle Larson, I mean, this is how he wants to open up the month of May with the victory here in the Cup Series, of course, running in the greatest spectacle in racing here at the end of the month in Indianapolis. So open up month of May with a win. That's exactly how you want to do it, of course. And he's got his sprint car deal on the side, which I'm sure he'll get plenty of wins there too. But on the Cup side, gives him a lot of momentum going into this month, and gives him a lot of confidence, of course, going into Indianapolis, into the month of May. So I think at the ending of that race, like just the green, white, and checkered portion of it, for Chris Buescher, I mean, the last lap, it's hard. I mean, I guess maybe he felt like on a restart his car handled better on the bottom. But, giving Larson the top there, dirt racer that's known for, running the top lane to make up time, giving him the top lane there. I mean, it's hard to defend that choice. And he had 2 attempts. I mean, he was able to beat him off of, turn 1 and 2, the backstretch. He chose bottom. And I was like, well, he's probably going to lose there because Larson's got the top and he can carry the momentum. And he had the draft on the back straight there, so they're still side by side coming off of turn 4. I think Buescher kind of realized that he messed up, and you saw in the middle of turn 3 and 4, he kind of started to drift back higher up, and I don't know if it was him kind of turning the car back to the right to try to pinch Buescher, or maybe he was just going all out and he was just sliding up there, but they both kind of touched a little bit off of turn 4, and then they touched again coming down to the apron, and then I think they touched again before the finish line there. So the closest finish in Cup Series history, not the closest finish in NASCAR history. That's 2018 Daytona with Nationwide, or Xfinity with Tyler Reddick and Elliott Sadler, but still the closest in Cup Series history. And it was too hard to tell there. I mean, on camera there. Especially with the paint of the line at the finish line being kind of crooked and everything. So that definitely was a little bit of a factor there, is, being able to tell who was up front right there at the line, of course. So would like, I guess, more clarification, though, on the painted line and where the actual timing line is for the finish. And then, also the transponders are actually mounted in the rear of the car, so there's a little bit of a difference there of when we see that, and there's why there was the confusion, because the transponders had Buescher first, but in reality, the nose of the car, meeting the finish line, that's where Larson was ahead. So, it took a little bit of time to figure that out, and then of course Larson gets announced the winner and everything. So, great finish though. But I mean, it would have been also fun if we could have seen it finish naturally under green. We had that long green flag run after a series of cautions to start out stage 3, and it came down to Chris Buescher and Denny Hamlin battling it out throughout the final stage, and then eventually with them both kind of staying out on gas there at the end. Denny Hamlin had to back up on trying to save fuel and maintain the gap to Chris Buescher. Chris Buescher really backed up hard to try to get himself to the end. We thought Kyle Larson would be coming there, but he was on 4 tires and he had 7 laps more on gas than both those guys, but they corded their right fronts before the final caution for Kyle Busch's spin. So if this thing had finished green, probably would have either been Denny Hamlin or Martin Truex Jr. Winning the race there at the end. So that still would have been a good finish, but and maybe it could have been a finish like what we saw. But I mean, the way this ended, green white checkered finish there, pretty standard and everything. But I think Chris Buescher just all he had to do is just pick the top lane there at least in turn 3 and 4, maybe not in turn 1 and 2, but make him pass you on the bottom, pull the slide job there in turn 3 and 4, and hang top throughout that corner and carry the momentum to the line and probably beat him there. But Christopher Buescher chooses the bottom lane and barely loses by literally an inch. So that's how it goes. And crazy how we've had 2 races this year in the Cup Series that have come down to beating car by mere inches. Of course, Atlanta mimicking the finish from cars, and then this race mimicking the Kentucky Derby, which happened the day before, and the horse beating the other horse by a nostril, literally. And now we have 800 or 600 horsepower, 2 600 horsepower cars, one beating one by mere inches there, so probably an inch or less. So crazy to see that happen, of course. And I have to say, I mean, it was good racing throughout. I mean, I saw on Twitter stuff saying it was an okay race, but the first stage was pretty wild. We saw Chris Buescher thread the needle early on in stage 1, trying to get to the lead and threading it between Chris Bell and Ross Chastain there. So that was pretty fun piece of racing there. And then of course, stage 2 was a little bit milder, of course, and then stage 3, I think it was a classic battle once we got past all those cautions. Very classic battle between him and Denny Hamlin there, and setting it up for fuel mileage type finish, where we saw all the passing going on, and then we got to save because we can't run as hard as we were before. And then you have another guy who may have saved his stuff trying to get there to the end. So still, very, very good finish there. So, this is definitely a early candidate for sure as race of the year. So, glad to open the month of May for Larson like that. So, very, very entertaining race throughout.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not like we wouldn't expect Larson to go out there the way that things are at Kansas. Being 1.5 mile racetrack, Hendrick and the Toyotas are continuing to be dominant, but we have to go and give props to RFK, to Christopher Buescher, minus his decision in 3 and 4. I mean, I think also he probably lost the race. I mean, the decision he made in 3 and 4 wasn't great, but I think he lost the race with his decision in 1 and 2 because he wasn't able to get off the corner there, pushed up and lost momentum. And these cars, of course, are very momentum based. And so Larson was running higher and was able to get that run, got on his bumper, probably would have had a little bit of, would have had the turbulence, but then he stayed in it, stayed up on the wall. Buescher went about a half, I think, groove below the wall itself, and that lane started opening up, and Larson basically opened it up like a can, and was able to make his move. I was wondering if they were going to end up, cleaning each other out there, but in the end, you get that great finish. Like Josh said, with the transponders, we saw Buescher win. Then they go and show it, and it was Larson. Kennedy goes and sends it on social media, showing the NASCAR, whatever start finish line camera, the slow motion camera shot. So, I mean, whatever. Larson, 25th career victory, milestone number. There was once upon a time the guy never won a cup race. And, a few years ago, as I mentioned, he won 10 races in his first year as a Hendrick driver. And ever since he's become a Hendrick driver, which I think was a matter of time, whether he had tried to cancel himself or not, he has taken on that, role. And I mean, it seems to bounce back and forth from week to week these days between who's the lead dog in Hendrick Motorsports, since there's 3 of them at the moment, between Larson, Elliott, Byron. Byron is doing exactly the same crap as he did last year, where he'll go and win a race, come out of nowhere and win a race, and then he'll have an odd dominant performance, and then otherwise he's nowhere. And then you have Elliott, who's making a comeback this year of sorts because he's not injured, and trying to re-establish himself as that guy. And then Larson, who initially probably has not been as comfortable with this car, probably because of the lack of horsepower, probably because of the way you have to drive it. Him and what's his crew chief's name again? Excuse me. For Larson.
Oh, Cliff Daniels.
Cliff Daniels. There you go. Thank you. Yeah, him and Cliff Daniels have started to figure out the proper mix there to get the car working, and different types of racetracks. And he is contending, and the consistency is a big one for Larson. He's a guy that has a lot of peaks and valleys with his driving, and he's a very streaky kind of driver. So if he's able to get on a run, it's going to be a problem for everybody. And he's got a near 30-point lead, and we're only 12 races into the season. We're not even halfway through the regular season, and he's got 2/3 of a full race, or basically half a race is worth of points if you win and you go and get maximum. So that's just that shows that he's doing good work, and it's a problem for everyone else if that continues. Mention the points of Larson, the points leader by 29, as Josh said, over Martin Truex Jr. We'll go over, Clyde is third, minus 55, Hamlin minus 56, Tyler Reddick rounding out the top 5 at minus 93. Ryan Blaney, your defending series champion, is 100 points out of the points lead. And so Byron minus 105. So there's that little battle between the Reddick, Blaney, Byron. Then there's another pod between Gibbs, Bowman, Chastain, and Buescher and Kyle Busch are there together. And then the battle for the cutoff is pretty close. You have Bell, Briscoe, Brad Keselowski, and then you have Bubba Wallace 4 points out of the cutoff. Logano is 18 points off of the cutoff at the moment. Nacho Libre, with his win, is in, but he's 18th in points. And 19th in points is Noah Gragson. I mean, that's something considering they had a huge penalty earlier this year at Atlanta, I believe, and him and Priest basically got it dry the way that Chase Briscoe got it at the 600 last year. And the 10 team has basically, after at least initial struggles, have responded in the last couple of weeks. Top 10 finishes, good pace in qualifying. He doesn't seem to be as douchey as he was before. I don't know. Maybe going and getting himself fired from a job finally woke him up, even with his sponsors that he does have. But, I think that's the one thing I'll ask before we move forward, because, like the Ford situation, it's pretty grim and dire when it comes to them actually being able to contend in races. Blaney, he seems to have a habit of showing up late in races, but early in races he's not very good. Logano has been on and off. They talked about Paul Wolf being lost, and Paul Wolf's one of the best minds in the whole entire garage area. You got Stewart-Haas Racing, which is not great under any circumstances, and there's plenty of rumors about what's going to happen with them and with that organization in general. Briscoe has a couple of good runs and then goes in the tank. Gragson all of a sudden is running good. Barry's trying to learn on the fly in a new car with Childers, and they're trying to compensate for whatever issues they've had for the last few years. And then Ryan Preece is out there, unfortunately, just making up the numbers. The Ford teams, you have the good qualifying. I mean, you had Buescher on Sunday, Josh, but I mean, we're getting to a point where we're going to get to halfway through the regular season. Darlington is an anomaly, but they're going to race there again in the playoff or close to the playoff or whatever. I don't know what the damn schedule is anymore with that, but I mean, when you have a brand new car, you would think that you'd be better coming in, or you'd give yourself a better opportunity to contend. It looks like they're even further off now with this new car, with this new body, than they were last year when they were basically out to lunch and they couldn't win races. But somehow or another, Blaney got on a heater and was able to get the job done when it counted. What is your level of concern in regards to Ford's prospects? I mean, I'm pretty concerned as a Ford guy. I mean, my favorite driver is generally irrelevant. It's been for the last few years, last 2 years has been, or year plus has been generally irrelevant. But they're all flashes from Ford, and they definitely seem to have qualifying down. But you need to be able to put a full race together. And Buescher was probably the first example of that that's happened with a Ford all year. I think maybe Blaney had one, and I'm forgetting, like Atlanta, but then at Super Speedway Racing. I mean, where are we at? Where are you at in terms of concern for Ford as we move forward?
I mean, I think half of Ford, you're probably not as concerned, and definitely not as concerned with Buescher. I feel like he's been running well in recent weeks. Gragson, I feel like he's been there, but the consistency has been off. But he's had 3 top 10s in a row, so he's starting to get onto a roll here. And then McDowell, McDowell's actually been quietly. I mean, they're not doing good in points, and they're 26th, but they've had some sneaky runs here and there. Blaney, I'm not as concerned with, but he still hasn't been able to be as good as what he had been last year. But overall, I mean, I think the car, the dark horse, is an interesting take on what they decided to do with the design, and it doesn't look like it's as aero. It seemed to be as more boxy on the nose than what the Chevys have and what the Toyotas have this year. So it's an interesting direction that they went in this year. But Blaney has not been as consistent as the what a defending champion needs to be. Brad Keselowski is hit or miss depending on what happens to him. I feel like it's mostly bad luck, but so he's still 15th in the standings. So there's a lot of unevenness throughout the Ford camp, and Buescher is currently the guy I think here with how they've been running. So I think for some of the Fords you have to be concerned. I think the most concern is Logano, because Logano is definitely not performing up to the standards that he's put up throughout his career. Seems like they've been off, but they've been off going all the way back to last year, the beginning of the playoffs, where they ended up falling completely out, and you could tell that they were not the same team that they were a year ago when they won the championship in 2022. So there's still a lot of time left. They may be getting to a part of the season where now things are starting to come together for them. So we'll see if that changes, throughout the summer, if they, with their cars beginning to starting to run better with Buescher, Gregson, Blaney. Blaney was, in this race, he was 20th. Then all of a sudden just started to climb up to the top 10 before the final yellow there. So somehow they found something in that final stage. But I think those are the three cars that I think have a good chance. You could maybe throw in Chase Briscoe and Brad Keselowski also. Maybe take Brad Keselowski before Chase, but I think those 3 or 4 cars are probably the cars that you can count on to, either contend for the playoffs or be in the playoffs. So there's still a lot of work to do, but we'll see how after this first half of the year, well, I guess this is close to the first half of the regular season now, but the first quarter of the year is over. We'll see what they look like here, as we get closer and move on into the summer, if they can pick up the pace and start to challenge, the Chevys with, Hendrick and the Toyotas. So it's going to be interesting to kind of see how this plays out. But yeah, they've definitely been off the board, even in the Xfinity and the Truck Series. They have less representation there, but even there, when they've had their chances, they haven't capitalized. Of course, the most notable one in the Xfinity Series in Texas, when Ryan Sieg gets beat by 2/1000th of a second to Sam Mayer there. So yeah, that's still a lot of close calls this year for Ford, but they haven't been able to break through. And even if they got a win, it's hard to believe if they can sustain it. So that's probably why I was so, bummed for Chris Buescher, why, they were, very, very down on that result. So you can only hope that they can pick up this momentum and move on to, Darlington, which, Ford could definitely win at Darlington. We've seen it before where we have a result where, if they get out in clean air, it could be a Ford car that comes out with the win. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I don't think it's, disaster or anything, but, certainly, you got to keep an eye on them as we go throughout the rest of the regular season.
Yeah, I mean, I think with like the point you made with the nose and some of the areas on the car, maybe the hotter weather will bring them closer. They'll probably have more downforce, and that might help them in those races when it gets a little slicker. Maybe there's something that they're working on, but their box is very small, you know, the way this car is. So you run what you brung, and if you aren't that fast, it gets exposed very easily. But there's plenty of time. There's half a regular season to go. You go in consistency wise, the way that the playoff is looking at the moment, there's going to be a good amount of points, drive people getting in through the points. So if you can consistently finish up front, finish in the top 10, you're putting yourself in a position to go and win, or at least give yourself a chance to win a title, even if it doesn't seem like it's a likely scenario at the moment. All right, so we'll move on to the Truck Series. There was the Heart of America 200 at Kansas Speedway. That was, yeah, so we've got to go over here. Yeah, the results: Corey Heim won stage 1, finished second in stage 2. It was a reverse for the guy that finished second in Zane Smith, the former Truck Series champion, driving for McAnally. Corey Heim wins by just over a second, leading the most laps, almost getting the maximum 59 points there for Corey Heim. 7th Truck Series victory. Only one caution for cause, and that was the spin or the fence, or what is it, Ty Majeski hitting the fence after cutting a tire. That was literally the only incident that brought out a yellow all day. The rest of the race was run under green outside of the stage breaks. Heim over Zane Smith, Christian Eckes, Caden Honeycutt. Maggot Moffitt was 5th in driving for Tricon. So Tricon had 2 trucks in the top 5. McAnally had 2 trucks in the top 5, and Honeycutt from 23rd has the best finish of his Truck Series career. Nick Sanchez from 31st finished 6th. Tanner Gray, after running well in the ARCA series, ends up with a 7th. Dean Thompson 8th. Daniel Dye 9th. And Matt Crafton rounding out the top 10. Ty Dillon actually qualified in the top 5, but fell back to 15th. Rajah Cruz started 4th, but finished 13th. Jake Garcia started 7th, finished 17th. Cam Waters making a second start in the Truck Series, finished 19th, just behind Lane Riggs. Ankrum, who had a good start to the year, was generally irrelevant. Started 12th, finished 20th. You got some of these other guys. Chase Purdy started on pole, had stage points, but ended up 3 laps down in 28th. Connor Mozak driving the Spire number 7. After winning the ARCA race, had stage points, started 5th, had stage points both stages, but ended up finishing 30th. So, I mean, not a lot really here in this race. It was pretty straightforward battle between Corey Heim and Zane Smith. 2 guys that raced each other for the last couple of years. Zane Smith struggling in the Cup Series as a rookie, but jumping into a truck. The McAnally truck's definitely fast on a weekly basis, and in this case, Zane Smith was a beneficiary, while his teammate Christian Eckes went and tried to maximize the amount of points he could get, while Corey Heim was dominant. I mean, I don't think it's too early to say that he's a favorite. He was the favorite last year. I don't, but I guess the question, Josh, is what does Corey Heim have to do this year to go and, outside of just like having a dominant flat track truck, go out there and make it a no question that he goes out there and gets that Truck Series championship, because it basically was. I think most people was gonna believe that he was gonna win the championship last year, and it went off the rails because Carson Osavar is a wackadoodle. And in this case, there are still guys in this series that aren't exactly the greatest with racecraft. So how do you take all that stuff out of play and guarantee yourself a chance? Not only guarantee yourself a chance at a championship, but once you get to Phoenix, give yourself a chance to not be around the squirrels, as Darrell Walsh Jr. likes to say.
I mean, I think for Corey Heim, you got to be dominant the entire season. And I think, throughout the entire season, regular season, build up the playoff points, give yourself as much of an advantage to where you don't really need to have to rely on getting out of a bad situation to get into, the next round. So you just got to build up the playoff point lead as much as possible, and then have a good flat track car at Phoenix to be able to win the championship. I think it's pretty simple, with what he needs to do to be able to win. So just have to keep continuing to win and be up front throughout the rest of the season. And I think just have a better composure in the championship race. We saw how it all came apart, and not really entirely his fault, but with how things went down there, it was kind of the maturity that we saw from him last year kind of cost other drivers a championship there. But for him, he just needs to continue to go out, win races, and continue on. So we'll see how it goes throughout the rest of this regular season. We still have a handful of races left before the regular season is over. So for him, just continue winning and be consistent. I think Christian Eckes is his main challenger right now. But Christian, I think his pace is not quite as much as Corey Heim's pace, but there's always things that can happen in these races. So it just matters to be able to make it to the end of the stage, and be able to either be up front or be around the front to be in contention for the win every week. So it's pretty simple for Corey Heim, I think. So very, very easy for him to build up his resume and build up the points lead as we continue throughout this truck season.
Yeah, and when it comes to, Corey Heim being able to be more dominant, there really isn't a whole lot of resistance outside of Eckes, like you said, Josh. Truck Series is generally unwatchable, largely due to the broadcast. And then the product itself that they put out there is not exactly the greatest at most racetracks. You'd have thought that at Kansas, which is a 1.5 mile track, that there would be a lot more action. Probably there definitely was behind those two, because people were able to pass and get their way all the way up towards the front, like Honeycutt, like Sanchez, but most of the guys that were from 4th through 8th at least. But we'll see what happens with that. You look at the schedule. So right now they're going to be on a span of 5 consecutive weekends of racing. So this is going to be a key part of the schedule. After that, this 5 consecutive weekends, they're going to have only 4 more races in the regular season, and a bunch of off time in between all of that. They're going to have 3 weeks off after that, leading into Nashville, then an off week, then a doubleheader, then 2 weeks, then Richmond, which will decide the 10 that'll make the playoffs. So not that much time really to go because of how the Truck Series schedule lays out. The points right now, Corey Heim and Christian Eckes both have 2 wins. Sanchez and Carruth have 1. You have Majeski, even with the rough weekend last weekend, still in 5th points wise. He's 4th overall right now points wise. Corey Heim 7 points ahead of Christian Eckes in the points standings. And Sanchez 3rd, Ankrum 5th, Carruth in 6th, Taylor Gray, Matt Craft, and Tanner Gray. And then Grant Enfinger has a 1-point lead on Daniel Dye, 4-point lead on Ben Rhodes. And then there's a bit of a separation to Bailey Curry, Jake Garcia, Stuball. There's a group of about 6 trucks there, Holmes, Purdy, Thompson, that are all within less than 20 points of each other, 18 points. And then they're probably in that chasing group that could possibly go and get in there, really. Friesen's 30 points behind Enfinger at the moment. Purdy's 40 points behind. So it's starting to become a tough situation for those guys, really. You look at Lane Riggs, who's had a rough, brutal start to his rookie year. He's going to need a win. The likes of Ty Dillon is going to need a win to get into the playoff. You have Caden Honeycutt, who's only run 4 races, and he's ahead of drivers who have full funding, like Dillon, Riggs, driving for legitimate organizations. Matt Mills, who's absolute trash. Thad Moffitt also fits that bill. Thad Moffitt is the worst driver right now that's run the full season. Spencer Boyd. Where is Spencer Boyd? I guess he's not running for points. Is that what it is? I missed Spencer Boyd because he's really terrible too. Oh, he's actually in 25th. My bad. Yeah, he's actually 25th in points. He's ahead of Mills and Moffitt, but he sucks too. So we'll see what goes on, and they'll be at Darlington this Friday night for the Truck Series. On a rare occurrence here on the GSP over the last few years, we're going to be talking about Formula One and actually giving it time. The Miami Grand Prix took place in the parking lot of Hard Rock Stadium, and Fish Lips got a good start, but he had to battle there. Checo Perez almost crashed into him, which would have made the race even better. But instead, he had to hit the brakes. It affected Carlos Sainz, and then Carlos spent the whole race being pissed off. Charles Leclerc was able to benefit even after a bad start. You had Oscar Piastri make a really good start and move up early on and run second for a good amount of the early stages of the race behind Verstappen, keeping him honest during the early part of the race. Just trying to go and bring that up, but we could have won. Yeah, timing and penalty. Yeah, so I mean that's Horner taking a lot of damage after hitting Bollard. Well, whatever. I mean, hopefully you'd run over bollards more often and make racing more interesting. Uh, the the results of the Miami Grand Prix was Lando Norris. Lando Norris, who started, uh, in fifth and moved up due to a safety car, well-timed safety car, due to the bollard that Max Verstappen hit, driving through that crappy Mickey Mouse chicane. They had to throw a full safety car to take that off the track. In the process, Norris pits. He was already leading, running long, and pits and gets back out in the lead to the point where they had to wave around the whole entire field to pick him up as the leader. And that from there, he had to make a restart against Verstappen, and he was able to pull the gap by over a second after one lap, which is what you need. And even with that, you'd think Verstappen would be able to catch him. Well, he wasn't able to. They'll say it's damage. It can come up with any number of things. He wasn't. His hard tire pace was not amazing prior to the damage. He was struggling to make a large gap, but he did have a gap, and probably without his error would have the likely scenario would have been what it always is, which is him winning. But he makes that mistake. That caution comes, their full safety car comes out, and it changes everything. And in turn, it leads to Lando Norris winning his first Formula One race by 7.6 seconds over his buddy Max Verstappen. Charles Leclerc finishes third, Sergio Perez fourth, Carlos Sainz fifth after getting penalized with avoidable contact with Oscar Piastri, which then in turn destroyed Piastri's race. Lewis Hamilton sixth, Yuki Tsunoda seventh, George Russell eighth, Fernando Alonso ninth, and Esteban Ocon giving Alpine their first points of 2024. Piastri fell all the way back to 19th and came back to 13th, and was within less than, he was within 10 seconds of the points, so tells you how fast his car was there. But I mean, the reality of the world is you have Lando Norris going out there getting his first career victory. It's always great to see that sort of thing. The amount of the celebration, the genuine joy that was there was cool to see. First McLaren victory since Ricciardo at Monza. First time a British driver has won for McLaren since probably either Jensen or Lewis, going back more than a decade. So it's going back to like 2012, I think. 12 years ago. Good deal for him. Puts him up in the points, at least for the drivers. The constructors, McLaren is definitely in the mix against Ferrari. So we'll see what happens with all that. But the story is Lando Norris this weekend and the Papaya crew. You had Ferrari with a lame blue streaks, not a blue car, but the Papaya car, which is consistent for the last few years, goes out there and gets that maiden victory for Lando Norris, Josh.
And it's about time for Lando Norris. Of course, over the years had the one missed opportunity in Russia a few years ago, and being able to get his victory there, and had to wait a long time for this. And it's interesting, he's talk about guys who are heavily into sim racing or made their way into sim racing. I mean, it's another victory for a sim racing guy for Lando Norris there. So of course he's a iRacing guy, and I think F1 video game guy as well. So good for that. It's another victory in the year of the sim racer, it seems like. But on the real track though, I mean they had a perfect timing, of course, with the caution or the yellow for Magnussen taking out Logan Sargent there and gave them a free stop, and waiting to pit gave them that opportunity to do that, of course. And for Verstappen, their car just wasn't the same after they ran over the bollards and hit the cone there. So that was just a mistake, a rare mistake from Max Verstappen there, and running over the curb and going over the bollard. Yeah, that's not something we see, and of course maybe caused a little bit of damage to the car, and definitely was struggling on the harder tires. So of course Verstappen said it's not as easy as it looks sometimes, and of course this time finally the streak for Verstappen on the track, of course, don't count this other defeat they had in Australia where he lost to an engine failure, but losing on the track hasn't happened in quite a while for Verstappen. And the first time he hasn't won in the United States since 2021. So of course Lando, leading into this week, there seems to be a theme. Leading into this week, he had the incident where he scratched his nose or injured his nose, whatever, and over the last weekend came into this, and now he's the winner. We had Carlos Sainz have appendicitis, and then the next race he goes out and wins that one. So maybe that's what it takes. Maybe Lewis needs to get hurt somehow, not really injured, but something happened, and then he goes out and wins the next race. Or Charles Leclerc needs to get a black eye or something, and he'll go out and win the next race. So something like that. So being humorous there, but that seems to be a trend of guys that were having to what they had to do to beat Max Verstappen on the racetrack. So this race was definitely interesting because it was not Max Verstappen winning. Of course, the restart after the yellow with Magnussen and Sargent. I mean, that was Verstappen's opportunity to go and try to take the lead back, but just wasn't able to do it. And Lando did a good job of stretching it out over the course of that run there, and finishing over 7 seconds above Verstappen. So finally we get somebody else to win here, and who knows when Lando will win. At least this season, we'll see if they're able to improve. But it's definitely a massive shot in the arm for him. Definitely a massive shot for McLaren. Of course, they haven't won since Daniel Ricciardo in 2021, like you said. So they definitely had good pace in this one. Of course, Oscar Piastri also had good pace until his run-in with Carlos Sainz. And he led a handful of laps as well. So great run for McLaren this weekend at Miami, and they definitely had the fortune to be able to do it. And we'll see how it goes. As we move on to Imola, and then move on to Monaco, see how they improve. But at least we actually got to see a race where Verstappen finished, but he didn't win.
Yeah, it's nice to see that, and the new upgrade package that McLaren brought, it looks like it, at least on this street circuit, worked out well for Lando. They had good pace in practice. One lap pace was sort of lacking, at least for now. But who knows between now and Monaco if that will change they can make that change. You also have the notion of Imola, which is basically a bunch of straights and a couple of chicanes. Maybe their car with less drag, it might be they might be a factor there. And then of course Ferrari wants to show up at one of their home tracks, so it could be a great battle amongst those top three. Lewis going and getting a sixth place finish after not having an amazing qualifying because the Mercedes is arguably the fifth best car on the grid. You're getting outperformed by two customer teams at times. I mean, this week it helped that Aston Martin was basically a non-factor, so that was good because Fred Alonso didn't even have, he had a bad qualifying run. Stroll was Stroll, so that's the one thing that helped Mercedes this weekend. But if they get back on it at Imola, then they're going to be well behind. They're going to have a big struggle, but we'll see what happens with that. In terms of the point standings heading to Imola in a couple weeks' time, Fish Lips is 33 points ahead of Sergio Perez. He is 38 points ahead of Charles Leclerc. Lando Norris is tied with his buddy Carlos Sainz for fourth in the points. Both of them have a win. And then there's a huge gap after that to sixth place Oscar Piastri, 42 points, which is double so what he already has. So Piastri, George Russell, Fernando Alonso, and Lewis Hamilton. That's 14 points separating those four drivers there. So Yuki Tsunoda rounding out the top 10 in teams. In the constructors, the Red Bull is 39 and 52 points ahead of Ferrari. Ferrari is 63 points ahead of McLaren. And McLaren is 60 points ahead of Mercedes. So that's those top four spots right now, and really the top six spots for that matter, are all kind of in their own little world. Mercedes has got 22 points on Aston Martin, and then Aston Martin has 23 points on AlphaTauri, whatever you want to call them. So Haas is seventh, Alpine is eighth. Williams has the better finish, so they're ninth over the kickstart, kick save, and whatever slobbers. Alrighty, so that is Formula One. Yeah, I mean, the thing about Sargent getting yeeted, it's not like they were running very well. He had gotten close to making Q2, but it really wasn't there. Then you had, the pace for Albon wasn't amazing either. The car was really, really bad, and they've taken a step backwards, which is crazy to think, which puts them in peril in regards to their constructors' standings place. Maybe that's part of the reason why Andretti isn't in Formula One, because both Williams and Sauber are like, our cars are terrible. And if Andretti actually makes a decent car, then they're not only going to take points and away from us, they're going to take real money away from us because we suck. That, and then you consider Alpine is terrible this year, and you have whatever our AlphaTauri, who has, well, AlphaTauri has points. It was Haas So you're talking about three of the smallest teams on the grid, and then you have a factory effort in Alpine, which stinks. So interesting how that all worked out. Move into the roundup here for this week. F1 Academy took place first time since the rounds, and it was in Jeddah, so 2 months ago was the first race weekend for them. They'll have another 6 weeks between now and round 3, which will be in Barcelona. Miami was the host for the racing this past weekend. The results: Abby Pulling getting a double victory this weekend. The Alpine junior driver driving for Rodin Motorsports, what used to be Rodin Carlin. In race 1, Abby Pulling gets the victory over Dorian Pan. For Prema, the Mercedes junior driver, Chloe Chambers for Campos, the Haas driver, Chloe Chambers, American, so American driver getting a podium in at Miami there. Neria Marti and Hamda Al-Khabaisi rounding out the top 5. The other Americans, Courtney Crone making her debut and Leah Block rounding out the field there in 14th and 15th. In race 2, Abby Pulling, as I mentioned, minimize that. Then in race 2, Abby Pulling over Bianca Bustamante and Dorian Pan. The podium there, Chloe Chambers 4th, and Weeg Woog. I'll have to watch the video and the highlights to figure out how that's pronounced. Round out the top 5. Leah Block gets her first point in Formula One Academy. Courtney Crone finishes 11th, so just outside the points. So good response by both of the American ladies there to come back after a rough first race to go out there and represent themselves very well there. The points heading into Barcelona in 6 weeks' time, Abby Pulling has a 34-point lead over Dorian Pan. Woog is 3rd, Chloe Chambers 4th, Bianca Bustamante in 5th. So Chambers, Bustamante, Marti, and Hamna Al-Khabaisi are separated by 10 points. And then you have the top 3 that are kind of in their own little zone. Jessica Edgar, Amna Al-Khabaisi, 6 points separating those two. Schreiner rounding out the top 10. Leah Block, as I said, getting her first points. There's 3 drivers that haven't scored a point yet on the grid heading into Barcelona. The top alcohol dragster, the race at Indianapolis Raceway Park, saw Tony Stewart get the victory. It was Cletus McFarlane arranging the whole race weekend. They had the Indy 800. Tony was leading, and then a caution came out late, conveniently, for a stopped car. That opened up the opportunity for the rest of the field to catch back up and get a chance. And I should go and look up that Indy 800. Yeah, Cletus. Yeah, there you go. Indy 800, Cletus and Cars. Yeah, that was the Indy 800, and then Burnout Rivals, which also had the NHRA, which had a top alcohol dragsters, and return to all events. Cleach Oval registration. Oh, that's just it's IRP. So there you go. Cletus and Cars. Doesn't show the results. You also do have introduction of top alcohol Jackson both days, blah blah blah. I take it. So yeah, there's nothing there. All right. We tried. Tony did win for the McPhillips team again that he was racing for this last year and change in top alcohol dragster. We'll go to MotoGP. They announced the new bikes or what the new formula will be in 2027 when they introduce new bikes. So more fuel efficient, using whatchamacall, sustainable fuels. They'll also have less aero and more of a road relevant technology with an 850cc motor. So and the smaller gas tanks, less aero, ride height, whole shot devices removed, GPS data will be available to everyone. They'll change the concession system for competitiveness starting in 2027. The points for MotoGP heading into this weekend's race at Le Mans for the French Grand Prix. Jorge Martin leads Pecco Bagnaia by 17. Martin crashed while in contention at Jerez. Bagnaia going and getting the victory there. So Enea Bassiani is third, 5 points behind his teammate. Pedro Acosta, 6 points behind Bagnaia. Maverick Vinales, 12 points behind there in fifth. Marc Marquez in sixth. Brad Binder seventh. Alicia Spargaro, big gap between those two, between seventh and eighth. And Marco Bezzecchi, Fabio Di Gianantonio rounding out the top 10. From Bagnaia all the way to Brad Binder is only 16 points, so very close between those riders there. So we'll see what happens at Le Mans. In Moto 2, Joe Roberts leads by 5 points over Sergio Garcia, 15 over Felipe Aldeguer, Gonzalez in fourth, Ayagura in fifth. So really, points are very tight. After the top two, you got 16 points between Aldeguer in third and Lopez and Canet 6 and 7 tied. So early days for the Moto 2 championship. So we'll see how that all goes for Moto 2. Yeah, they in the race itself, they finished the last race, Aldeguer the winner by 1.28 seconds over Joe Roberts. Gonzalez third, Garcia and Arenas round out the top 5. So that was in Spain at Jerez. So they've only run, this is only 4 rounds so far this year. So we're going in around 5 early days, looking to see if Joe Roberts can go and maintain this momentum. First American to lead a Grand Prix motorcycle championship since Nicky Hayden back in 2006 when he won the MotoGP World Championship that year over Valentino Rossi. The IMSA series will be racing at Laguna Seca, newly repaved Laguna Seca at the Motul Course de Monterrey, powered by Hyundai N. My bad on that. Wrong vehicle or wrong manufacturer there. 34 entries in the field. It'll be the GTP cars and then both GT Daytona Pro and GT Daytona out there. 10 GTP cars. You have the 2 factory Porsches and the 2 customer Porsches, the 2 Wayne Taylor Acuras, the Cadillacs represented by Ganassi and Whelen Engineering. Rumors are that Wayne Taylor Andretti will go to Cadillac due to Andretti's involvement with Cadillac for their Formula One program that, exists but doesn't exist. Wayne Taylor, of course, having a long background and history with GM products going back to the days of young Tom Kendall and the Intrepid. You got, and then I talked about the 2 Porsche customers there. So they also announced the 24 Hours of Le Mans entry list there. So Dane Cameron right now is a reserve. Unfortunately, he's not on one of the rosters, which is sad, but we'll see what happens. Maybe he'll be able to get a chance to go and race at Le Mans once again. In GT Pro, 9 cars, 2 Corvettes from Pratt & Miller, the 2 Multimatic Ford Mustangs. Then you have Paul Miller Racing with their BMW, Pfaff with the McLaren, Vassar Sullivan Lexus, Harder Racing Aston, and the AO Racing Porsche. The biggest entry list is GT Daytona with 15 cars. You got, I'm trying to see anybody who has 2 cars, but nobody has 2 cars in that category. AWA with the Corvette. You have Vassar Sullivan with their Lexus, Harder Racing with their Aston, Conquest Racing with Ferrari, Korthoff Preston with the Mercedes, Andretti Motorsports, Porsche with Jared Andretti, Gabby Chavez, running number 43, Wayne Taylor and Andretti Lamborghini, Proton Competition with a Mustang, Windward Racing at Mercedes, Sheena Monk and Stephen McAleer racing in the Gradient Racing Acura. And what is it? There's the Inception Racing McLaren, the Forte Racing Lamborghini, MDK Motorsports, new entry. Then Wright Motorsports, a different driver lineup than there has been in the past. And then the 557. I'm not sure why that's the number, but because they usually run numbers in the 90s at Turner Motorsports, but they'll have that for Robbie Foley and Patrick Gallagher this weekend at Laguna Seca. All right, so yeah, WEC, as I mentioned, the WEC will be at Spa for the Spa 6 hours and World Endurance Championship, 6 hours of Spa, and the points standings. I didn't mention the points in IMSA, but it's still relatively early. Points right now in the World Endurance Drivers Championship, the Porsche Penske duo or trio of Lauderer, Estra, and Vantor lead by 16 over the Toyota team of Kobayashi, Conway, and Nick DeVries. The other Porsche team of Matt Kawicki, Matt Campbell, and Michael Christensen is a point behind the Toyotas in third. In the Manufacturers' Championship, Porsche leads by 9 over Toyota. Ferrari in third, BMW and Alpine rounding out the top 5. The World Cup for hypercar teams for the privateers, the Jota Sport Porsche number 12 because of Tom Brady, who got roasted yesterday, point ahead of the AF Corsa Ferrari. And then a huge gap between them, the AF Corsa Ferrari, and then Proton Competition. Hertz Team Jota Sport there. LMGT3 drivers. I can't even say that guy's name. I'm not even going to bother. Klaus Bachler, Joel Sturm. So that's a Porsche. They're leading the points after two rounds over Augusto Farfus, Lee Young, and Sean Galail. 17 points back there in second. Tied with them is the Aston Martin, Harder Racing, Riberas, Mancinelli, and Ian James. It's a really close battle, actually. Valentino Rossi, Maxime Martin, Al Harthy, a point back of those two guys. So, very close battle points-wise for those three teams. Heading into Spa, the Manti Porsche number 92 leading the team's championship over the WRT BMW, Harder Racing Aston, the other WRT BMW, and then the D Station Racing Aston Martin. And then there's the news. They'll probably say who are the 186 drivers. They go and announce the entry list, which will have how many hypercars. They make it small enough so you need to basically, you can't even see. It's crazy. They don't tell you how many. Well, it's hard to. All right, 23 hypercars. You have 16 in LMP2. They're racing in other categories. They're not racing in the World Endurance Championship anymore. And then in LMGT3, you have 23 cars representing that class. The reserve list is one hypercar, the Proton Competition, second car from them, and then Inter Europol with an LMP2, two LMGT3s, an Aston Martin Ferrari, and then a second LMP2 with Michael Dynan listed as the driver there. We'll definitely give more time to the entry list for the 24 Hours of Le Mans as we get closer to the race itself. Alex Palou and Scott Dixon both listed as drivers for Cadillac Ganassi Racing for the Le Mans 24 Hours. Then in terms of, there's no American driver, as I mentioned, because Dane Cameron wasn't listed as one of the drivers for the Porsche team and their 3-car effort. Toyota, their usual. I don't know who that is. Will Stevens, Ilott, Nato, and then the 38 is Rasmussen, Hansen, and Jensen Button. Mick Schumacher there for Alpine, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll definitely give you more detail as we get closer to the 24 Hours of Le Mans later in the next few weeks when we get to that, because it'll be in the middle of June. Formula E at Berlin. We'll go and give you the points in the Formula E championship. Heading into the doubleheader at Berlin on the airport course, which is a regular stop on the championship. So the standings heading in: Pascal Wehrlein, the leader by 7 over Nick Cassidy. Jake Dennis, the defending world champion, in third, 13 points behind. 14 points behind, and fourth is Oliver Rowland. And that's really the battle at the moment. Mitch Evans did win the last round at Monaco, get himself back into the mix, but he probably needs another win and some help to go and really get himself back into the championship. I mean, there's still half a season to go. There's 4 doubleheader rounds taking place. So Germany, then you have China, then you have the doubleheader at Portland, and then London to end the season. So Cassidy has been, you got Wehrlein, who has 2 wins and not a whole lot after that. Cassidy has been on the podium 5 times, 1 win, 3 third place finishes, once win, 1 second place, and 3 third place finishes, surrounded by a couple of DNFs. Jake Dennis has a win, 2 second places, and a third. And then Oliver Rowland, a win, a second, 2 third place finishes for him. So we'll see what happens in Berlin for the doubleheader for those guys. World Rally Championship. They'll be at Portugal this coming weekend. Rally Portugal. They'll go and race there, and that's gravel roads, and then there's soft and sandy can become rocky and rutted. Key corners are so gravel rally. The entry list for Rally Portugal, you have, in terms of the Rally 1 class, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 cars in Rally 1. Rally 2 making up a good amount of the vast majority of the field there, of the 69 car entry list. That's not a typo. Trying to see if there's any American drivers or of anybody that it can look at their French, Portugal, lots of Portugal, all that. Oh no, Ireland there. Yeah, no Americans, of course. You have the Hyundai team with 3 cars. You have Toyota with 3 cars, and then Ford or Toyota with 4 cars, Hyundai with 3 cars, and Ford with 2. So that's Thierry Neuville, who's the leader of the World Championship over Efren Evans, and then Adrian Fourmeau coming off of a podium recently. Tanak, then Kalle Rovanperä, the two-time defending world champion. Takamoto Katsuda, Sebastian Ogier, so both hard-timers, and also 2 of the best to do it. Ogier, a legend, Rovanperä, a burgeoning legend himself, Gregoire Munster, and then Daniel Sordo, rounding out the Rally 1 cars. There. And then the last but not least is Indy Next at IMS Road Course. It should be the first of 2 races at Indy, since they should be running the Freedom 100 still. But unfortunately they aren't. They'll race at Indy for two races in the road course, and then they will come back again after the Indianapolis 500 at Detroit to race there. Nolan Siegel is tied with Jacob Abel for the points lead. Same statistics for both of them. Louis Foster third, Kyle Collette fourth, Michael D'Orlando tied with Collette for fourth, Miles Rowe in sixth, then Reese Gold, James Rowe, Jonathan Brown, Salvador de Alba rounding out the top 10. You have, I'm going through the names there, Yuvan Sundaramurthy is 18th in points. The two women drivers, Lindsay Brewer and Jamie Chadwick, are currently 19th and 21st in points. So we'll see if those drivers can make an improvement and move themselves up during the doubleheader weekend here at IMS Road Course. All right, speaking of IMS Road Course, it's the precursor to the Indianapolis 500. It's the Sanzio Grand Prix at the IMS Road Course. So that usually it's been a Penske benefit of sorts over the years. Whether it was Simon Pagenaud when he used to drive for them, even before he drove for them, to be fair. You look at Will Power. He's won there multiple times. Alex Palou is the defending race winner. Scott Dixon, Colton Herta, Alexander Rossi, Renus VK won his maiden IndyCar race there. Will Power, I mentioned Dixon, multi-time winner there. Newgarden and Power in 2020. Pagenaud. Power has been the most dominant, and it used to be Pagenaud and Power. No Pagenaud anymore, unfortunately, but Will Power's still there. Dixon won at Long Beach. You had Palou, who hasn't won so far early in the season, but you've been competitive, definitely up there in the points. The standings heading into Indy, Colton Herta with a 1-point lead over Will Power. Palou is -3 in third. Scott Dixon is -7 in fourth. And Rosenquist rounding out the top 5, 14 points behind Colton Herta. Pato Award awarded the win at St. Petersburg is 6th. Kyle Kirkwood, Linus Lundqvist, after his first career podium. Scott McLaughlin after his win at Barber, making up for the enormous penalty that he got for using push to pass on restarts. And Root Beer Floathead rounding out the top 10. So, I mean, you got, what is it? You have 27 full-time competitors. There's been some fill-in drivers, multiple drivers that have been in the 51 car. You have Ilott, who ran once, and then you have Teo Pocher's run twice, ahead of the Pocher is ahead of Stingray Robb and Christian Mitt Rasmussen, which is pretty lame. It's a tight race there in the back. But yeah, you got a lot of drivers to choose from there. I mean, when you look at it in terms of the guys that have run every race, there's 23, 25. So 25 that have run every race. So I guess we got the border is right there. Roman Grosjean and Ericsson. Trying to look at the picks here. You had first dibs last week, Josh, so I'll go first here for the Indy cars. My choice for the win, I'm gonna go chalk, and I'm gonna go with willpower. Penske, of course, having to try to fade the cheating scandal. What better way to fade cheating by just going and outpacing everybody? Willpower probably going and getting a pole, and then going off to victory, since usually the Indy Grand Prix is pretty processional anyway, and lacks a lot of drama because there usually aren't that many full course yellows at this racetrack. IMS, IndyCar, IMS road course. Phil goes with willpower to win, and my choice for my wild card this is just pretty hilarious. I really should do this, but I'm going to leave it there. And I'm going to go with Christian Lundgaard because he's been really good at Indianapolis road course. He did qualify on pole, I think, for this race last year. Has won, of course, in Toronto last year. So the Ray Hall Letterman Lanigan team has shown some pace on the road and street circuit. So Lundgaard at one of his best tracks, see if he can go and put together another great run there. Josh, you get your picks here. Who do you look at as your winner and wild card for this weekend at the IMS Road Course?
I'm gonna go with, for me, I'm gonna go with Scott Dixon winning at the IMS Road Course. I think he's due for a win here at the road course, and what better way to start off the month of May by winning. And for my wild card here, I will go with Kiffin Simpson. That's a very interesting wild card, but it could be underrated, especially a place like Indianapolis. But definitely had a kind of a run at Barber last, where he was in the grass a lot. So we'll see if he can recover and get a decent run here at the road course.
I really thought you were going to go and take Newgarden there. I left it on a tee.
I guess it's the one opportunity that we could say that Joseph Newgarden is a wild card.
Yeah, that's really why, because it's not going to last. Because of the massive penalties that they got, and his bogus story that he told. But either way, yeah, you got the likes of right now in the bottom half of the guys who have who've started every race: Marcus Ericsson, Lundgaard, Newgarden, Green Rehal, Simpson, Marcus Armstrong. They're all clustered together, and they're only separated by 4 points. And Grosjean's only a point ahead of them. Then you have Alexander Rossi and Rinus VK. That's 8 points separating. What is it, from 11th all the way to 19th in points, and then you look at Root Beer Floathead is 10 points ahead of, all the way 10 points between him and Graham Rahal, who's and Newgarden are 16th and 17th. So, and Lundgaard. So very, very close. 3 races in. Opportunity month here, month of May at Indianapolis, 2 races to go and determine, give yourself the momentum leading into the balance of the season, since after Indianapolis they're going to be racing, they'll race 3 weeks in a row with the Indianapolis 500, Detroit, and then Road America before they take a couple weeks off, go to Laguna, another couple of weeks off, go to Mid-Ohio, and then they have a double header at Iowa and then Toronto. So 3 consecutive weekends there prior to the Olympic break. And then they'll race 3 consecutive weekends at Gateway, Portland, and then the Milwaukee Mile before the final race of the season at Nashville Super Speedway, which was supposed to be the Nashville road course, street course, but then that went away. So we'll see what happens accordingly with the IndyCar Series at the IMS road course. We will go and bring up J-Ski since it is time to preview NASCAR, the Craftsman Truck Series first. The what's it called? The Buckle Up South Carolina 200. In terms of the truck series, the schemes, they don't have the paint schemes up for that, but you have Bailey Curry throwing back to Cody Efaw's father, Chuck, or Charles Efaw. You got Thad Moffitt running a STP kind of scheme there. You have Daniel Dye running a peak throwback to Kyle Petty. Christian Eckes, what is it, the Brownie King, whatever the hell that is. Trying to get the paint schemes. It would be nice to know some of them that are specifically Darlington. We don't really have a lot of them up there as of yet. There's Kansas, Cam Waters. That's really, the faction. They're running what looks like the one of the STP cars from back in the day with the Petty 75th anniversary with the silver, and then the Petty blue and the Dayglow orange or red. So that's really the extent of the schemes that we have seen. McAnally usually does a good job So we'll see what they bring to the table for the rest of them. Josh, you get first dibs here. Kyle Busch, of course, racing on Friday night. Colby Howard making a rare start in the truck series this year, at least, in the one truck for Tricon. Going through all these other people. Saw regulars, Maggio 22. What's it called? Ross Chastain will be in the 45 for Nice Motorsports. Connor Jones in the 66 for Thorsport. Jack Wood in the 91 for McAnally Hilgeman Racing. Who are you looking at? I think there's a obvious one there, but for who to win and wild card for this weekend at Darlington for the trucks.
Yeah, I'm just going to take Kyle Busch here to win, which these days in the truck series is not as guaranteed as it was maybe 4 or 5 years ago, but it's still a solid pick to take, so I'll be taking him as my pick for the truck race. And then the wild card pick, I'm gonna go with Lane Riggs. He needs a good run. He's been finishing here and there. He had a dust up with Cam Waters here at Kansas. Maybe he can turn that into a better finish here this week. Darlington, I feel like he's a guy that is probably better on the short tracks and intermediate tracks where it requires a little bit more driver skill, which Darlington is that type of track. So I think he's a good wild card pick for this week.
Yeah, definitely valid. Both of those picks are. I mean, we've been picking Lane Riggs, I think, all year on and off, and it has just been a really bad start to his rookie campaign. Hopefully, can turn it around and get that truck in a victory lane, so he gives himself a chance to make the playoffs. Here's got 18, and then 26 drivers that have run every race. For me, I'm going to pick Christian Eckes since he's been really good at Darlington over recent past. They've had pace in their trucks weekly. Leaving Corey Heim out there is probably not a great idea, but I just think Christian Eckes has a better chance at Darlington this coming weekend. As my winner, so I'll put that in. If I could go and find the hyphen, yeah, Christian Eckes to win. And then my wild card pick for this race. This one is somewhat difficult. I am going to go with. I'm gonna go with. I'll go with Dean Thompson for no reason whatsoever. I'm just going to go with Dean Thompson. It's almost like I decided to make my own personal algorithm and say, who can I pick that's the most random, that's the most likely to hit the fence. So, I mean, there's plenty of guys that could go and hit the wall amongst that secondary group. I guess that's what I'm picking for who's going to hit the wall. I think Lawless Allen will probably hit the fence at some point. Spencer Boyd will get in the way. Matt Mills really sucks. And Thad Moffitt also is just absolutely atrocity. For as much as people shit on Kyle Petty, He was never, I don't think even at his absolute washed up worst, he was never as bad as Dad Moffat is. So he has that. We'll see what happens though with the trucks. Next week we'll talk about on episode 220 of the GSP. They announced, wow, that's something that Carson Kvapil will have the 6 additional races added to his schedule this year on the Xfinity side. So that's great to see for a guy who future probably is one of the best future talents right now. And 2 races is finishing the top 5 in both. So great to see that. Jeremy Clements always hits with his throwbacks, and he did yet again doing an Alliance throwback with Alliance Driveway Solutions instead of Alliance Truck Parts or Truck Service. They matched it to a T, the lettering, the whole bit there. So I mean, it's a great paint scheme. I'm trying to look at who else has. I mean, Cole Custer's running a Johnny Sauter throwback with yellow transportation. Trying to look at what they have the paint scheme. They don't have that paint schemes. Yeah, for Xfinity and the Andy here, they don't have it there. Junior Motorsports. I'm trying to see. It would be nice if they actually had them up, but that one was from Dover. That was Talladega. Wheel and Engineering. They went and won. Whatever. I'm not even. It's not worth it. We've spent enough time here. Yeah. So for me, this weekend we got Xfinity. Yeah, William Byron driving the Hendrick number 17, and Brandon McSwain is the crew chief. Now, if you're going to tell me that that's the same McSwain and that his dad is Fatback, that would be really crazy. We have Taylor Gray in the 19 for Gibbs. John Hunter will be in the Sam Hunt number 26. Eric Almirillo will be in the 20. You got, there's a TBA for Joey Gase is 35. Go through some of these other people. Yeah, that Carson Kvapil will be in the 88. Yeah, and that's about it. So for me, Darlington, I mean, it's a veteran type of track. You know, you've had some good races in recent years, of course, Briscoe and Kyle Busch at COVID time. That race was the one that kind of put Chase Briscoe on the map in major NASCAR. There's been other finishes in recent years there. For me, I'm going to go with Eric Almirola. It's the low-hanging fruit. The guy has been in the Cup Series for God knows how many years. It's his type of racetrack. You're only going to have, I think 3 sets of tires, including the one that you're going to start the race on for a 200-mile race at Darlington. It's basically ripe for Eric Almirola to go and get a second win of the season in the Xfinity Series. Eric Almirola to win, which is interesting since a 10 car is running pretty good in the Cup Series. My wild card for this weekend at Darlington. I mean, it would be a wild card for sure if I did that. I need to go to the points. That would be the easiest way to do this. Xfinity Series points. You have 19 plus others. Yeah, 25. So yeah. I could do that. In theory, Almirola's running. He's an Xfinity regular, so, but he's not a my wild card. This kind of makes me pukey. The notion that I'm going here, but it also something that kind of stands out because of the experience that he has and what they're doing with limited equipment, with limited money. I am actually going to pick Matt DiBrito as a wild card because just the experience thing. It's Darlington. If you can keep the right side on the car, you're liable to get a top 15 finish out of it, and that's really what they're trying to do out of that organization, which is part of the Sieg team, but it's like a offshoot of the Sieg team. So DiBurrito's my choice as a wild card. How about you, Josh? Who are you looking at?
This is probably out there, but I'm going to pick Carson Kvapil to win, which would be huge, but it wouldn't be the first time that a junior motorsports guy had a early career victory here at Darlington, going back to Chase Elliott, who got his second career win in the Xfinity Series in the number 9 car back in the day. So Carson ran pretty well at Dover. I mean, I think Darlington's probably going to be a good track for him, and of course would parlay that into more seat time in the number 88 car and make it 5 full-time cars for the junior motorsports team. So I'll go with him to win the race. It's pretty wild, but that's what we're going with here. And then my wild card here, I will go with I'm just gonna go with Jeremy Clements here as a wild card at this track. So we'll see. I like his throwback. Definitely a good throwback there with the Robert Presley themed throwback for him.
South Carolina's own Jeremy Clements, and he usually hits it out of the park with those throwbacks. Yet again, another one. You have Coleman probably is going to be pretty emotional if he's up there actually working the race, seeing his dad's old paint scheme out there, and then hopefully they're inviting Robert Presley down to be a part of the team this weekend, since they did such a good job with that deal. And I mean, who knows? He probably knows Clements' dad from his racing, from his time behind the wheel. So we'll see what happens with that. That'll be interesting how that all works. The Cup Series, the Goodyear 400 at Darlington. Go and get the entry list there. 293 laps, of course, at Darlington instead of 367, which is a 500-mile distance. You have the throwback for Tyler Reddick, which is a random Tim Richmond one. William Byron doing yet another Jeff Gordon one. Jimmy Johnson throwback from Alex Bowman. Corey LaJoie throwing back to himself. So is Todd Gilliland. The 5-car doing the Kellogg's Cornflakes. Kellogg's Cornflakes car. And then, so let me just go through that. Yeah, Trackhouse, Busch Light, with Ross Chastain. They did a pretty good job with that one, I would say. Gumby Cindric Freightliner Bass Pro for Bald Spot Dylan, Harrison's for Josh Berry, Castrol for Brad Kay, which is a throwback to the Toyota Supra from the Japanese GT Championship from back in the day. Kyle Busch with Zone. William Clyde Elliott II throwing back to Junebug with Unifirst on the car. Overstock.com for Gagson. Yahoo for Denny Hamlin. Menards and Maytag, which I think that's the blue, could be a blue car, which would be similar to one of the throwbacks he did to his dad. Briscoe throwing back to his dad and grandfather with that Mahindra tractor scheme. Buescher has Fifth Third Bank. You have Gralla and Derek Kraus racing there. Auto Owners Insurance, so Truex won't have a throwback. Chris Buescher, I mentioned that. DeWalt 100 Years, which is weak. They could have thrown back to Matt Kenseth. I forget what Harrison Burton is doing. I feel like I think Harrison Burton. Oh, he's throwing back to Glenwood. I think that's a Glenwood throwback for Harrison Burton. Shell Pennzoil is a throwback to the Le Mans Porsches, the Andretti Le Mans Porsche from back a few years ago, which I think he already did one time, but there's like a more accurate portrayal this time. Bubba, no announcement as of yet with the McDonald's car. Curiosity there, but it would be cool to see the Mac Tonight car. Might be an interesting one. Going and seeing the whatever Batman kind of throwback. Again, that might be another one. Go and really spin it around and go and do the McDonald's scheme from back in 93 and 94. Very simple. Wouldn't be a bad one. They did it with Ross Kurt. Chastain when he drove the 42 car.
And then they did it with Kurt. Kurt drove the throwback, I thought, too, with the 45 in McDonald's.
I mean, I probably, I don't remember, unfortunately, but it's entirely possible, and probably very likely that way. So who knows? We'll see what Bubba has in store for us. Likes to use his Instagram to announce all kinds of things. So, what do you call Byron? We know with the Flames, Black's tire for Hemrick. I'm not sure. Yeah, there's no throwback for McDowell. Priest with United Rentals. I think he's doing something to one of the modified guys. Maybe not. I'm not sure what Legacy is doing. Oh, Richard has Oscar Meyer and something. We talked about Alex Bowman. We'll figure Rick Ware Racing will do some sort of throwback. Keebler Gibbs is just going to have a bland car. Zane Smith with Focused Health. I think he's doing something. I don't remember. Hocevar is basically racing a cop car. And the way he wrecks people, he probably needs to avoid the cops. And then Daniel Suarez is throwing back to Adrian Fernandez. As he had just recently become a U.S. citizen, Daniel Suarez, so congrats on that. He throws back to one of Mexico's great racing drivers in Adrian Fernandez, who plied his trade in Indy cars, of course, won in kart and also in the IRL. So going back to his initial IRL scheme when he moved over, that's what Daniel Suarez is doing this weekend. So, Josh, you get first dibs on the Goodyear 400. Who do you pick for that race there?
I'm gonna go with Denny Hamlin to win the race. This is a Denny Hamlin track. It seems like this is Denny Hamlin's year so far. It's probably going to be either him or Kyle Larson at the end of it, but yeah, he's been very successful here at Darlington in the past. And yeah, normally he has a throwback here with Sport Clips, but I guess not this year, and going with Yahoo this year. So yeah, pick Denny to win the race, and then my wild card, I'm gonna go with Todd Gilliland as a wild card here. Very out there, but I mean, he was in the top 10 late here at Kansas, of course. Maybe a little bit different here, but we have seen it in the past where a front row car came out and got a top 10. John Henry Nemechek, remember, in his original Cup season back in 2020, finished ninth. And that's without even looking that up. I feel like I remember that one off the top of my head at Darlington post-COVID. When they made the return there. So that's wouldn't be surprised if that happens, of course. But I will say, though, the Chase Elliott Dale Jr. throwback, I know we probably talked about that before, but that doesn't feel real to me to be a throwback. That's just the recency of that 2014. I mean, I know they've probably thrown back to other schemes before, but I guess as a official throwback in the Cup Series, that definitely just doesn't feel right to 2014. But I mean, it's a good scheme, and honestly, that scheme in itself is a throwback to the 1970s, because I think Junior was inspired by a similar looking car from back in the day, that short track or something from back then, but just doesn't feel real to me that that car is being thrown back to. And honestly, that's almost a Southern 500 winner there, because he finished second to Kevin Harvick on that weekend there as well. So yeah, crazy to see that car out as a throwback. And even the Firestorm 24 with William Byron, that's a little crazy to see that as a throwback, as we're now really throwing back to schemes that were in the 2010s and everything, so which does not feel that long ago, honestly. So we're starting to get towards that era, and it won't be long before we're throwing back to this era. Watch Kyle Larson, if he's still racing in the Cup Series 10 years from now, throw back to the HendrickCars.com throwback, and it'll just be the throwback from 2021 when he started. So that we'll see what happens.
Throwback from 2000 whatever with Ricky Hendrick. Yeah. So yeah, it just means that you're getting old. That's really what the throwbacks is. I don't have to feel as bad knowing all the throwbacks now. I don't even know a bunch of them, so that's it's a good thing for me, I guess. I pick Larson to win. It's one of his best racetracks. Why not? And then, of course, the battle between him and Denny Hamlin. That's the rivalry leading into North Wilkesboro the following week for the All-Star race on new pavement. My wild card selection is Eric Jones, because he's coming back from an injury. The guy has been great at Darlington over his entire career, and he is a two-time winner of the Southern 500. So for two different organizations. So, I mean, what better way to come back to the Cup Series after a couple of weeks away, after a brutal wreck at Talladega, and coming back to one of your best, if not your best, racetrack. Legacy has had moments here and there. So far this year, I think they've been slightly more competitive than they were, obviously, compared to last year at this time, but I think they're more similar to what they were at late last year. Eric Jones, this would be an opportunity for him if he can put it together and kind of flip the grid, so to speak, if he were to go out there and get a victory or get a really good run at Darlington this weekend. All right, so we went through all the picks there. We've made our deal there, so now it's time for Josh to let us know all things going on in iRacing and gaming in the sim segment. So take it away, man.
Yeah, of course. This week on iRacing, lots of choices, of course, as usual. Usual NASCAR Cup Truck and Xfinity at Darlington Raceway, so that'll be an opportunity to throw back in there. Of course, in the Cup, I usually run the Dale Jarrett number 88 scheme from 1999, that era, so that was one of my first little 164 diecast cars that I got, so it's always one of my favorite schemes. So that's definitely a throwback there. But other series, the NASCAR Legends 87 series at Talladega at 11:30. So it's at they run every hour or every other hour at the half hour. So that's should be one to go hop on there. The Production Sports Lab or Production Car Sim Lab Challenge at Mid Ohio this week. There. Let's see what else. The weekly challenge at, which one is this? The weekly challenge, which car? Mustang Supercars. This is the Supercar challenge at Winton Motor Speedway for the V8 Supercars there. Let's see what else. Looking here. iRacing Porsche Cup at Spa. So I think that's they have a Porsche series there. The IMSA iRacing series. So I guess, they're running the simulated version of what will take place this weekend at Laguna Seca with the Motul Grand Prix on Sunday there. So the fixed iRacing IMSA series doing their own 35-minute sprint fixed race at Laguna Seca. Let's see which class fixed series there. What is allowed? So BMW GT3, Mercedes GT3, and then the prototypes as well, in addition to the Audi GT3 and the Ferrari GT3. So that's actually a good one to try out, although you do need to be in class A, I think, for the IMSA series. So let's see what else we got. The IndyCar series at Indianapolis Motor Speedway Road Course. Of course, that's the open series and the fixed series there, so be on the lookout for that. And then let's see, looking at other stuff here. The BMW Challenge Tour at Laguna Seca, which I think that's just the BMW car that they run in the prototypes, along with, I think, one of their GT3 or GT4 cars there. Let me see if I can find the other series. I need to sort it out. Go with road racing or sports car road racing here. Trying to look for the GR86 series here. Apply there, GR86. looking, where is that? Oh, well, you have the Mazda MX-5 at Landmark Park, GR Butt Kicker Cup at Road Atlanta this week. So that'll be an interesting one there. That's a good track for that car as well. So yeah, that's lots of choices as well for iRacing this week. Definitely some opportunities, especially with IMSA and with IndyCar on the road course, of course, Talladega and Darlington as well on the oval side there. See if there's any important news here on iRacing. Looking at their thing here on the news. I don't know if I can see it. I'm looking on my phone. News. Okay. Yeah, I don't really see anything news-wise. I know there is a couple of events. Obviously, the Indianapolis 500 at the end of the month, but there's also the I guess the private. There's a couple of privately held events here that are coming up soon. The Majors Series, Majors Garage, they're a setup shop. They're doing their own version of the Indy 500 on May 19 and May 18th, so that might be interesting as alternate or maybe something like that. If I go there on their page, I just want to see if they have any, if it's different, if they have any prizes. I guess podium, they'll earn a coin and a digital badge, so yeah, that's kind of cool, I guess, if you're interested in competing in a private event there in addition to the real, or I guess, the simulated iRacing Indy 500 on there. So that's a interesting one there. So yeah, that'd be a good month here for streaming, of course. Of course, the Indianapolis 500, time to defend the title here, and we'll see, hopefully can make it and be able to do it. So looking forward to doing that. That'll be at the very end of the month, I think, looking at the schedule on iRacing. For whatever reason, they didn't have it lined up to, because normally this weekend would be the fixed Indy 500, and then the next weekend, the 18th and the 19th would be the real Indy 500 on iRacing. This year, it's actually the week after the real Indy 500 in real life. So the 27th through the 2nd of 27th May, 2nd of June on iRacing.com. So a little bit different, but gonna have to plan for that, of course. But yeah, looking forward to participating in that as always. But yeah, when we do stream, maybe I'll do some IndyCar at the Indianapolis Grand Prix. So looking forward to trying to do that. So as always, looking at streaming on there potentially, Twitch TV at usailor2 on there. So go on there and follow or watch. Of course, Twitter at JP Huffine. Of course, lots of discourse on the NASCAR community regarding next gen, of course, and lots of discussion on there. So we'll be definitely trying to participate in that, or at least be following along with all that discourse as we go throughout the week and head in to the next race weekend, of course. And of course, our YouTube page, which will have this podcast on there at Buescher Podcast on YouTube. So go on there and follow and subscribe to our channel. So yeah, as always, glad to bring it, talk about it every week, and always have our takes, and we have wild picks sometimes, and sometimes we have wild discussions as well. So definitely there's always something to watch and look forward to hearing about here on the GSP.
Absolutely. Wouldn't, as I always say, wouldn't do it with anyone else. Obviously, we've done this for 200 plus episodes, and it's crazy to say that, from where we started, the humble beginnings in COVID time, to where we are now, talking about freaking Lando Norris winning a Formula One race, and previewing all the things, because we got the month of May, absolutely awesome time of the year for racing. So, and going to so many historic racetracks, Darlington, Indianapolis, and in Charlotte, North Wilkesboro, etc., etc. So plenty of great racing, plenty of great racetracks to go to here as this month goes by. So with that, you can find me at Philip G. Matthew or PG Matthew 28 on Twitter. You can find me at Philip G. Matthew 28 on Insta. You can find us at Gripster Pod on Twitter. And nice, the Knicks have won game 1 of their series against the Indiana Pacers by 4. So that's great. We'll go and you can find, as Josh mentioned, on the YouTube page, you can find our video stream. Also go and follow the Grid Talk. I was on there for the recap of the Miami Grand Prix. So support to the men and women that work on there. It's a great program, especially if you are into Formula One. Looks like I'm going to be doing some hits with some of the people on there since they want an IndyCar presence, and also with maybe even NASCAR. So probably talk something about that too. So we'll give that more detail as we come along, as we get more information. Yeah, so with that, for Josh, I'm Phil. Thanks for always listening and supporting the GSP. And we'll see you next time.